expert panel, former White House official under President George W. Bush, Ashley Davis, and former chief of staff to the White House press office under President Joe Biden. Hey, Yamisi's in here. I didn't realize that was Yamisi as I was walking down the hall. I'm so happy to see you, my friend. You have always been such a straight shooter, and I know this might be a little bit difficult from your perspective, having worked in the Biden press shop. I do think you would agree it's an interesting time, if nothing else, as the president tries to make moves and make deals to change the, let's just call it for what it is, to change the status quo. What do you think of that?
Look, I think the U.S. and Qatar relationship has always been a great bipartisan issue. We understand that this hub is definitely something that's needed for military readiness, for stability. I think everybody can agree on that. Modernization of anything that reinforces our safety and security as the United States of America is always encouraged. I think important to note that this is a decades-long partnership. And so President Trump is building on something that past administrations, both Republican and Democrat, have continued on. And it'll continue on long after him as well. I think this is great.
Let's just go around the horn. Anybody else want to weigh in on the thinking here and what we're seeing as the president continues this trip?
Well, first of all, good morning, and it's definitely an early morning. It's nice to be with you both this morning, but I do think that he is there and in this region for three reasons. One, AI, two, China, and obviously three, which was mentioned, was our national security. I mean, what he put in place the first term with the Abraham Accords is exactly what he is continuing to try to build on. This region is a very strategic region in regards to how we deal with various issues with Israel. It's also something that's very important in regards to the race with AI. I mean, this region, I spent a lot of time here. There is so many different parts of the AI race that actually the Middle East is a part of, and we can go into that later if we want to. And then finally, China. A stronger region here is much better as we try to go against China and even Russia, but especially China. So him trying to build this bridge and continuing to build it stronger is something that's very important to U.S. national security.
Speaking of national security, Ashley, let me share just a little bit of sound here. This is the president talking about Iran. And again, his idea being, I am not opposed to developing a better relationship with the regime in Tehran, in so much as long as they don't have nuclear weapons, we can perhaps move forward. Here's the president. I'll get your reaction, Ashley, on the other side.
And you probably read today the story about Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran. And we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country. Frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's the only thing. It's very simple.
He wants them to be a great country. It's very simple, so long as they're not a nuclear country. Ashley, your thoughts?
Of what he's been talking about all along. Obviously, we did try under President Obama to have some sort of Iran deal. I mean, the Republicans, Democrats, we don't even need to get into that, thought that it was maybe a little bit too lenient from the nuclear weapon point of side of things. But listen, again, this goes back to China in my mind. Having Iran develop a nuclear weapon, one thing, no one in the world would want that to happen just because of the uncertainty of that country. But also, if we try to bring Iran in, if we try to bring Syria in with their new leader, that's only more beneficial for us as the United States and our allies to counter what happens in China.
Yamisi, I think Ashley's point is well taken. This is a circumstance that could play out in at least this way. The president make more deals that sort of pushes China to the side. If he can somehow miraculously push the boulder of Iran over the top of the mountain there and finally get them to relent, again, this could change the entire complexion of the region. Your thoughts?
Well, I think Qatar definitely has a unique diplomatic relationship with Iran, and so it makes sense that he would join with them to back-channel some talks. But I definitely think U.S. diplomacy should lead with U.S. in the driver's seat, and it's not something that I want to see outsourced even to Qatar.
Before we move on, I just want to play one more bit of sound here. This is the president talking about Russia and Ukraine. Again, as we continue to bring you these live pictures, the president making his stop there in Qatar, his second stop during his Mideast tour. Obviously, today it was supposed to be a very big day in Turkey with the leaders, perhaps, of Russia, perhaps of Ukraine, and who knows if we could have gotten the leaders from both of those countries. Maybe the leader of this country would also have made his way to Turkey to continue talks on a cessation of hostilities between those two nations. This is the president talking about Russia and Ukraine. As we know at this hour, it is not going to happen in so much as the president's not going to be going. Neither will his Russian counterpart. Here's the president speaking about this about an hour ago.
If something happened, I'd go on Friday if it was appropriate. But we have people right now negotiating, and I think that I just hope that Russia and Ukraine are able to do something because it has to stop.
So he says, listen, he hopes that he can get them in to do something. I, for one, am not holding my breath, but, you know, hope springs eternal, Ashley.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a very sad situation in general, as we all know. I mean, this is something that the president ran on, obviously. It's something that he really personally wants to have complete with all the people that are dying on both sides. But, you know, listen, I don't know what I don't know in regards to the behind the scenes conversations happening right now. I think that there are diplomatic efforts 100% that are very stressful and hopefully making progress. But the fact that the President Putin is not coming, obviously our president is not coming. I did think it was a good move that President Zelensky at least said he would try to attend. But again, I mean, there is so much complexity with what's happening there and with that war that, you know, it's hard to comment of the reasons. And he did still leave the door open a little bit, as you said, on Friday. Remember, today's just Thursday, which was supposed to be the day. So maybe we'll have a surprise.
Boy, wouldn't that be something, Yamisi, if the president were to maybe make his way over to Turkey on Friday, having finally convinced the leaders on both sides. Again, it seems to be quite the ladder to climb, but it's certainly possible. You heard what he said there. Your thoughts?
I won't hold my breath waiting for Putin to come to the negotiating table. Look, Zelensky has shown up every time he's been asked to. He has gone all over the world. He has pleaded his case for his country. This is definitely a war that we would like to end on both sides. It's not good for anyone. However, we definitely need to see a deal that doesn't leave Ukraine exposed or give Russia too much operating power here. So if Putin is able to come to the table, that's great. I don't have much hope and faith in that.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.